I need to move my.
Here you go.
There we
We're
go.
here.
Hi, everybody.
My dear.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you. I'm going to introduce the podcast because I always forget to do that.
Okay.
So then I'll introduce you if that's okay. So
okay.
I'm glad everyone's here joining us for the Pointing It Out podcast. Glad you found us on YouTube. If you're joining us for the first time or a regular watcher, please hit subscribe because that helps other Stitchers find us. And people seem to be having a lot of fun with this. So I hope that you are. I'm Melissa McLeod. I'm at the Wool and the Floss here in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. My partner in crime is Megan Holmes. She's at the Needlepoint Clubhouse in St. Louis. But most importantly, today we have with us, I'm kind of a groupie. I will call myself, I call myself a CHB groupie. So we have Carolyn Hedge Baird with us today, who is an outstanding stitcher, teacher, stitch designer, book publisher, and just a fabulous all-around nice person to be.
And a mom.
And a mom, yes. Well, see,
And
so that's what I think we should talk about. So will you tell us a little bit about you, the non-stitcher?
Well, I have two grandsons were born last year, Baird and Orion, and one lives in Chicago and one lives in Austin with their parents. And I have a son who lives here, and they just had a grand dog. So I have a new Cavalier King Charles Spaniel grand dog named Copley.
Awesome.
And so I had three children, and I went to college in Virginia at Mary Baldwin College for 2 years. Then I graduated from SMU in Dallas. I have a degree in biology and a minor in art history. And I thought I'd always be married. And so I really didn't think about a career. And I always loved needlepoint. I started stitching when I was 11 years old. And I just loved it. And my friend talks about it, going to the football games. I was in the drill team. Going to the football games on the school bus, and I'd be back there needlepointing.
I love it.
I don't remember that, but she said I always had my needlepoint with me.
So who taught you to stitch?
Pardon me?
Who taught you to stitch?
Well, my mother had a friend that opened a shop in Tyler, Texas, where I grew up. And she taught me how to stitch. My mother never really needlepointed.
Okay.
And I always loved it so much. Now, in my Stitchpirations book, I have a list of people who inspired me to needlepoint.
Okay.
And Cherry Swan was my first needlepoint lady, and she taught me how to needlepoint.
So I have to just tell you really fast, I learned how to stitch when I was probably about 8. And my mom stitched a little bit, but not really. But her good friend owned a shop, and her good friend taught me how to stitch. And actually, her good friend owned this shop. Like, it wasn't called this, but I learned here. And so her good friend was Marnie Fessenden. I don't know if you've met Marnie over the years, but
no,
Marnie Ritter now. That if I called her that,
yes, I know. Yes, I haven't ever met her, but I have her books.
Yes. So that's how I learned too. So that's kind of fun.
Funny. Yeah. Well, I always loved it, and when I was in college in Virginia, one at Washington Lee, which was about an hour and a half drive away, one of the dean's wives had a TV show on PBS about needlepoint, and she had a wonderful store in Lexington, Virginia.
How fun.
And I would go there and take classes, and I just loved it. She was fabulous.
So did your friend stitch at that point in time?
No.
Yeah, I was kind of an outlier too. Like,
yeah, nobody did.
It was my little secret thing that no one really knew about me.
Yeah. But I always loved it since I was a little girl.
Very fun. Very fun. So did you ever do anything with your biology degree like that?
When I graduated from college, my father died when I was a senior in college. So I really wanted to be a doctor, but I felt like I needed to go home and be with my mom. And so I went home. I worked at a blood bank.
Okay.
And it was so I just loved it too. And then I got married and moved to Houston, and I started working in a needlepoint store here when I was about 23.
Okay. Wow.
And I worked at Chaparral now for 20 years.
Right. Right.
So I've been working a long time.
Good. Well, and I didn't write this down on our little ideas that I want to talk about, but I should have. I was remiss in not mentioning you have a little mini store inside of the store you work at.
Yes, I do. There used to be a store here in Houston called Hires, and it was real near where I used to live. It was a wonderful store. They had all kinds of fabrics and really nice ribbon, and they went out of business. Now, back then, people were just doing finishing without any ribbons. But I always went to Hires and bought ribbon for my things that I was having finished. And so when they went out of business, I thought, I'd kind of like to have some ribbon, carry some ribbon, have a little store. So I did. And it it's not very big. And when I started the ribbonry, it was about 25 years ago or so, there was lots of antique ribbon, vintage ribbon in France.
Okay.
And they found a lot of it in attics and basements, and now you can't get it. I've had one of the ladies that goes over there and shops, and they can't find any. So unfortunately, almost all the old vintage ribbon is gone.
See, people have been doing too much Marie Kondoing or whatever we call it, right?
Yes, and as you can tell, that's not my style.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm rid of her, I have to say, and sometimes I pay the price for that.
Yeah, I just love to put ribbon on my things, though. I just love the way. Sometimes people can't tell if it's the ribbon or is it stitched.
Right.
And that's the way I like mine to look.
Well, you have beautiful, beautiful taste.
Well, thank you.
Yes, yes. So now you said you started working at a needlepoint shop just a couple years ago when you were 23.
Yeah.
So at what point did you start teaching?
I started teaching about 25 years ago. Mm-hmm.
So
and I had changed stores and I started teaching. And now I teach, well, I did before the COVID. I was teaching 6 times a week at the store. And then I would travel once a month for 10 or 11 months of the year.
Right.
And go teach at other stores.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it too. I made so many cute needlepoint friends.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to come to a few of your classes.
Yes, you did.
Ohio to see you. I've been to Illinois to see you, and
yes, that was fun.
They are great. And so at some point, you started. Well, let's circle back to. Let's finish talking about your teaching a little bit. So I know that you're doing a little bit, maybe, of virtual teaching now. Is that right?
Yes, I just have 2 Zoom classes that are small.
Okay.
One of them has 5 and one of them has 2. The one I have with 2 is kind of like a practice. Because
Right.
I'm gonna try to teach a project where everybody's working on the same thing. But I do consultations. Carolyn's COVID consultations on FaceTime. They're called C3 for short.
I love
I
it.
do that on FaceTime Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mostly with students. But
Right.
I've met some great other people who've contacted me. I've done it with them, and I've met some really cute needle pointers.
So when you say students, you mean mostly with the people that you've taught?
Yes.
Yes. And so
yes.
now you're expanding that a little bit with other people that have contacted.
Yes.
Nice. Nice.
Yes.
Good.
And I just think doing the one-on-one, you get a lot more information.
Oh, for sure.
I think the Zoom is great and all, but I think if you're real serious and you want to get a lot of stitches, that the FaceTime, for me and for most of my students, they seem to like it.
Oh, yeah.
You get lots more personal time.
Of course. Of
Mm-hmm.
course. So throughout all this, obviously you've discovered your ability to come up with stitches all on your own as opposed to just relying on books like most of us average teachers do.
Well, now I do look at a lot of books, and I always try to pick new stitches on everything I'm going to do for a stitch guide or that I'm going to teach. I always pick new stitches. I always look for new stitches.
Yes.
I'm doing something now that I've used some of the stitches out of my new book, and the rest I'm looking at stitches on Pinterest and in books and on websites. So I'm always I love to learn new stitches.
Me too.
It helps your brain.
But I think it seems to me, you've told me before that you like most other people have their kind of standbys. Like I think, did you tell me at one point crisscross Hungarian a little bit?
I
of
love crisscross Hungarian.
Do like not the major.
And I try not to use it on everything. I do pretty good too, every once in a while. Yes, I love the crisscross Hungarian plaited goblin, which it has several different names. So
yeah,
those I really like.
Yes, that is well. It's because they work in lots of places, so you can't City Hall, right?
Right.
Good. So tell us which was your first book? I have all of them, and I've never.
Mary Needlepoint was my first book.
Okay, and how did that develop?
Well, I just wanted to learn. I had written a lot of stitch guides that I taught for classes, and I just put them all in a book.
Okay.
And a lot of them I had used on my own pieces. And so I just compiled a book. And I love my Mary Needlepoint book. It has a lot of good information in it. That it has a chapter on lettering that I think is really good, and it has a lot of stitches I don't have in my other books.
Okay.
All my books have different stitches. There's a few that overlap, like crisscross Hungarian, and but mostly they're all different.
Okay, so that was book number 1, and how many years ago was that?
This was in 2001.
Okay, so you've been at it almost 2 decades.
2001.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and then I wrote Mary Easter eggs, and this one I've used it so much that the cover fell off. But this one, we were doing a bunch of egg stuff that year at the shop.
Right.
Easter related needlepoint. We had a series that we had designed. So I wrote this book and called it this because of what we were doing at the shop.
Right. I know. I always have to convince my customers it's not just Easter stuff. That
this book is my students' favorite.
Yes.
They love that.
Yeah. I know Lisa Abrams, who I've met in Chicago, that I know you are good friends with. That's her favorite.
Yeah. Yes, it is. She loves it.
Good.
She's funny.
Well, then what came after that?
Then I wrote Needlepointing in Your Nest.
And that's my favorite.
This is my favorite too.
Oh,
this is my favorite. Yes, this is my favorite. And it has a lot of good information for beginners in it. I like it because it has a big chapter on 4-way stitches, which I call them 4-way stitches because no matter how you turn the canvas, they're the same.
Right.
And they're non-directional, so they make nice backgrounds.
Yes.
But I like this one too. I love it.
Yeah. I tell people that I think it's great because if you're a newer stitcher, you'll learn so much from it with the beginning couple chapters.
Yes, if they read it.
But then, and I'm a reader. So I also tell people when we have people come in looking for books, I'm like, there's some people that they just want straight up charts, and there's other people that want words. And I personally like words because it makes me think about the stitches. But then I think it's great because it gives you the basics. But for me, as how many years have I been stitching? Too many, 40 some years. It's still incredibly useful to me. And there's not a lot of books.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's
and I, as you can tell, as one of my coworkers called it, she doesn't like the fluff. But see, I like fluff.
I like fluff.
And I write it for other people who like fluff.
Right.
And so I'm not going to change the way I do them.
No.
because that's what I like doing.
But your charts are still good, so they can ignore the fluff if they're.
I do the best I can with my charts. Every once in a while I come across a mistake though.
Well, none of us are perfect, that just
One of my students, well, I'm a biology major, I don't know nothing to see about writing. And anyway, I love needlepoint in your nest.
Yes, my favorite too. And then there were
Yeah.
two that kind of came out.
This was my teeny tiny came next. And my son was in the Army, and he went to Iraq, and he went to Afghanistan. So I started writing a book, putting a book together, really compiling a book while he was gone. And I worked on it so hard so I wouldn't think about,
Right. Could happen, right?
He would call me and say, Mom, I'm a grown man. I was like, no, you're not. You're 20. And so he had graduated from college and was an officer, but you still worry. And when you're in a war zone.
Yeah, we worried about kids no matter if they're in the house next door. Let's be honest.
When they had plywood over their windows at their place where they stay, it's not a safe place.
You had a reason.
So I started working on a book, and it got so huge. And then I couldn't put it together after he came home. I don't know what happened. I had the cover. Brenda Stafford painted me the cover and everything. Couldn't do it. So I took all the little stitches out of it and put them in teeny tiny needlepoint stitches. And people love this book. This is not my favorite, but I sell millions of them.
Yeah.
And people just love it.
Well, if I have, you being in a shop, this, like there's certain people that come in there and they won't do a little project. And there's other people who won't do a big project. So
right.
Women only kind of stitcher, which there's a lot of those because they like the instant gratification of a smaller thing. It's the perfect book for that, for sure.
Yeah. Then after this, I did my James in the Army book. Needlepoint Stitcherations I did next. And this was my little King Charles Spaniel I had.
Yeah.
And this one, I did stitches that were inspiring stitches. And they're harder stitches. And some of them have 5 threads. You use 5 threads.
Right.
This one also has little quotes from different famous people and little stories that different people wrote about needlepoint and what inspires them to needlepoint.
Okay, and I have the book, and I have to admit, I don't think I've read some of that in there, so I'm gonna have to.
It's a fun one, but if you really, and I have a few people who really, really like hard stitches, and they love this book.
So that's kind of like, that's the one that went with teeny tiny. So it was all one giant thing?
It was all one big, yes. And you can see how this one, I remember talking about, well, I'm not going to make any more big books, but and they get bigger each time I do one. So my field guide is I did Vicky, and I realized it one day, I did Vicky Sawyer, Melissa Shirley's canvases for a year.
Wow. And
I wrote stitch guides for a lot of birds. And I thought, well, I'm going to do a bird book. And this is it. And I think this is a great book if you're into birds, or it also is great for landscape.
Yes.
And fish. The leafy stitches can look like scales on fish.
Oh, good idea.
So it has other uses than just birds. But if you're doing a bird, you need this.
I will share with you some a deep, dark needlepoint teacher secret of my own. I hate stitching birds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so many of my students bring in canvases with birds, and I go, oh my God, what am I going to do? You have literally saved my life with that book.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
you've got the little cheat sheets in there. Let's see. Oh, I don't have that one. Oh, that's the one you're sending me. So what I love about it, maybe you can show some of your key in there if you can find it easily. But how you have the side bird, the front facing bird. So
Oh, yes.
so you like
Yes.
literally,
And
if you don't get birds, once you see that key, then you can look at all the stitches.
I'm so glad you know that because most people don't.
It's a miracle. And then the whole chapter on like beaks and tails and legs. I mean,
Yeah.
it literally saved my life as a needlepoint teacher when we lost
This is the key.
There we go.
This is the key. And I made these into little, and I put them next to the stitches. Like if you're doing a front facing bird and this is next to the stitch,
right?
It's good for a front facing bird, side facing bird, and the other side facing bird. Yeah. And so I have all these little icons in the book.
It makes it like no brainer. It's like you're doing like granimals.
This is the front. Yes. I'm so glad you like it.
I do.
Because it's really great.
I tell people that I think it's your most expensive book, and it is worth every penny if you're going to get birds. For sure.
But see, here I have different stitches. And then a lot of the time, see, I put an arrow. This would be good for this one's head.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just did a little stitch guide for a stitch along we did in the shop that was a Melissa Prince canvas. It's a deer and cardinal. Oops, we lost your face again. There you are.
Yeah.
So anyways, the cardinal's the smaller piece of it, and I was like, what am I going to do? Well, I just went to your book and went to town, and it
good.
So yeah.
Well, it has stitches for small, medium, and large birds.
It's organized very well.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sure. Then my newest book is the Needlepoint Notebook. Stitches inspired by Carolyn's travels.
It is from tonight. I can't wait to take it home and check it out. I'm super excited.
Good, thank you. And I got it. This is my travel book I kept in my purse for about 10 years. And it has all kinds of notes and stitches and restaurants and books and magazines, Netflix programs, kinds of cheese, all kinds of stuff that I've written down from my classes where I've been. And even in my own class, that I have a class that talks lots about books, so I write them down.
That happens a lot. Book talk and things to watch while you're stitching.
Yeah, and this one is now retired because it's falling apart. But I did the cover of this. Kelly Clark helped me did the cover.
I love that.
Because this used to be really black, and now it looks chalkboardish to me.
Yeah, for sure.
So Kelly did this for me, and I just love it.
We interviewed her as well, so I have all my groupies. I'm a Kelly Clark groupie too. I have to.
Yeah, I love Kelly Clark. Yeah, me too. But anyway, that's where my new book came from. Was all from here. I just went page to page and graphed them on my computer.
Nice. So does that make 7 books in all? Was I counting?
7 books. 7 books.
And what did we just say? 19 years. That's prolific.
Yeah, I guess so. It was harder to do them when my children were young.
I don't know why.
So, but they let me work on my computer, which I thought was very nice of them because they didn't want me to help them with their homework.
Oh, God, no. What do we know?
We don't know nothing. Not one thing.
So you had said, now I'm forgetting, I'm looking at my stack of books, so I'll remember. What did you say your favorite one was? Needlepointing in your nest?
Needlepointing in your nest, yes.
Yeah. And what's
I love needlepoint
so far?
Merry Easter eggs and Teeny Tiny. Oh. And I think it's because it's a small size.
Right.
It's hard to take a 2-pound book on your trip.
Yeah.
I'm working with someone now, a very sweet friend we're going to try to put one on as an ebook.
Oh, Oh, fancy.
So she's working on that now. Yes.
Okay.
And they said they had an ulterior motive because they don't like to have to haul my books everywhere they go.
Fair.
I
Fair.
said, well, that's fine. Just
Well,
don't make me. I like books, so I don't read much online.
yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I have a e-reader, but I prefer to read a real book when I can.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way. The one thing that I am remembering when I've been in classes with you, which I found fascinating, you would say to me, which books do you have? And then I'd say, oh, I own these 3 or whatever it was at the time. Now, of course, I own them all. And you'd say, okay, well, so you have Needlepoint in Your Nest on page 230 on the bottom right-hand side.
Yeah.
And I was like, how does she possibly remember where each stitch is in your books? I was
Yeah.
amazed by that.
I don't remember them all. I remember a lot of them, though.
That's
And
amazing.
when I do teach and when I write stitch guides, I do them all out of my books.
Right.
Because I know the stitches, I know where they are, and I know what they work well on.
Well, and that's why you can give people as much information as you can in a short period of time. Because
most all my stitches, I've done them, on something.
Right. Amazing. So tell us, you've alluded to this a little bit, but your inspiration for your books, I think we kind of talked through that a little bit, but what about for individual stitches? I think that's part of what your travel notebook is, but tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, the stitches, some of them I've made up. There's, when my son got married, he got married at a hotel at a fabulous place in Virginia, the Kingwood Estates. That was a wine, what's it called? A winemaking place. They had grapevines, and the hotel it wasn't really a hotel. It was more like a mansion. Where we stayed was somebody's house, and they added on. They made it twice as big by building another one and connecting them. And in my new book, I have, it's called Keswick Hall Floors. And they had all kinds of cool looking floors in the hotel. And so I drew them in my notebook and made stitches out of them. One of them is from the carpeting at the place Needlepoint at the Needle Nook of La Jolla. We go next door to a real estate office. And I drew a carpet. Their carpet had a pattern, so that's in here. Then Sally Ann's sweater, that's a stitch in here. She wore a real interesting sweater one day to work. So I copied that.
And she's the owner of your shop, the shop that you work at.
Yes, she owns the shop where I work. So it's just when I see things that are inspiring, patterns, they're all over the place. And I've seen stuff in elevators, on the wall and on the floor. I know it's sick, isn't it? It just, I'm not looking at anything but all the patterns. And I get a lot of inspiration from things like that.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And then so you must take that information, and obviously you're looking at canvases. Like, tell us about how you approach a canvas. Like, how do you decide what to do first? What gets you excited?
When I look at a canvas, usually the first thing I think of is the background. I usually write down the background first because I think it's a real important part, and you have to get the right. All needlepoint has lots and lots of choices. There's not a perfect way to needlepoint anything, but I think you got to get a good background.
Yeah.
And I do that first, and if there's a landscape or something, I do that.
And have you found that's changed for you compared to like 30 years ago?
No.
Okay.
It's just I can do it. I do it faster now.
Okay.
Because I've seen a lot more, and I really enjoy it. And I like to think of new stitches that go with the piece. Like my friend was working on one of those Penny McLeod mask girls.
Yeah.
So I thought about the virus and how it's round. So we did a background that's round.
There's your biology coming through.
Yeah. And, you know, if it's birds, I like to do some kind of like a feather. So it just depends on what piece it is with what stitch I pick for the background.
Interesting.
I'm
I try to
doing-
keep the background first because I've learned the hard way that trying to do the background afterwards can be complicated depending on how counting through things and all that. But
yeah. This one is kind of, you know, has a kind of a Mexican look to it. So I chose a stitch. You know, I don't know if y'all know this or not. You might not. They cut things out of paper and they string them together at Mexico. And so I picked a background that was kind of like that.
Pretty.
They do real pretty. It's cut out paper and it'll look like lace.
Nice.
Yeah, you have to be here.
No,
You don't have much of that in Michigan.
A lot of Hispanic influence there. So
yeah, we do.
That's super great. It keeps life interesting for sure. So you usually do your background first, then you move on to the object, whatever it is.
Yeah, to the object, the biggest part. Like I would probably on the stocking do the background and do the cuff and do the suit on the Santa.
Okay. So
and
you're
then
kind of working big, small.
Yes. I do the big and then go down to the tiny.
Okay, good to know.
But I really don't like stockings with toys on them.
Because
those toys take so much time. And I always say, you know, everybody gets credit cards now, gift cards. Santa should have a bag full of gift cards. Then you could cut out pieces of your expired credit card and glue them on your stocking, you know, like instead of toys. I think, or make little gift certificates and stuff.
it's so funny.
I think toys are so hard.
Yeah.
My classes know that.
See, and I'm okay with toys. It's those darn birds, but you've solved my
Well,
bird.
I'll help you with, you send your birds up here, down here, and I'll send my toys up there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So in terms of your stitches then, do you usually think stitch first or do you think thread first, or is that kind of something?
What I normally do here at the shop, I pick out my threads first.
Okay.
And then I pick out my stitches. And a lot of people don't realize that what stitches you use and what threads you use with them can make a huge difference.
For sure.
And someone wanted me to write a stitch guide for them, and they wanted to use their own threads. And I started working on the guide, and I couldn't do it because I know she's never taken a class from me. It worried me that it wasn't going to turn out because I don't know what thread she has.
Yeah, it's the marriage of it all that.
So yes, it's just where you just can't do certain stitches with certain threads.
Right. That makes sense. Do you have a favorite project that you've done yourself?
I love my Mary Lake Thompson Mockingbird boot I just taught in January. That's my favorite. I love it. And I don't have it. It's at the finisher. And I just sent it this summer. And I love that. I've done a couple of rugs that I did when I was really young, a Barbara Eye rug.
Oh,
and I did a Maggie Lane rug. And
do you let people walk on your rugs?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And we've, the dog always goes there to throw up.
Of course. Of course.
Always.
They always go to the most expensive thing in the house.
The old pattern name wool was so durable.
Yes.
And I would just put it in the bathtub and wash it off.
Wow. Nice.
Mm-hmm. Or put it in the, wash under the sink. Those are real durable. The pattern A and old ones are.
Right.
So I love my rugs, and I would like to do another one. I have one other rug canvas I'd like to do.
And when you do rugs, do you do just the basic needlepoint stitch, or?
Usually, just most of the ones I have are all basket weave. Hmm.
Yeah.
And but I think the one I would like to do, I'd put some small stitches over 2 on it,
Okay.
like alternating mosaic, plaited goblin, stuff like that.
Right. Right. Well, good. So I have something that also I find fascinating as a shop owner. There's always kind of like, I'll ask people, one of my major questions when people buy something from me is I say, do you stitch on a frame? And the reason I ask that is
Oh,
because I want to cut to even inches before I send it to them. Because, you know, if they work on a frame and I send it to them at 12.5 inches, it's annoying, right? And I think I always get this pause, like they think I'm asking this with judgment. And I always say some of the best
they
stitchers
do.
I know don't stitch on a frame. And I think for the most part, you fall into that category, right?
I do, because Melissa, when I learned how to needlepoint, they didn't use them.
Right, right.
And I love to wad it up and get it nice and soft. I'm doing a Santa now without a frame. But I brought 2 canvases in here to show you. They're both on frame.
So occasionally you do use a frame. Oh yeah,
Yes.
just show that one.
Yes. Yes.
And why did you do,
Occasionally I do.
so do you have a rationale for when you do and when you don't?
Well, this one, it's on a frame now, my big pumpkins.
Oh, that's pretty.
But I did it off the frame, and then I put it on the frame to take pictures of it. Yeah, well, I know that's terrible.
All backwards, but okay.
It's terrible. If I'm gonna teach this dove, that's the one I want to do for a class online. So I put it on a frame because it'll make a better movie.
Gotcha.
You know, and it'll be flatter.
So you're using the frames mainly for marketing logistical needs, not necessarily for stitching needs.
Right. But I will say, canvases look so much better when they're stitched on a frame. They truly do.
Yeah.
And they're straighter, they're easier to finish. The finisher likes you more. The shop owner does too.
This is true. This is true. But I tell everyone, you know what? You can do whatever works best for you, for sure. Mm-hmm. But I have had people that come in and their hands are cramping up, and I will encourage them to try a frame.
I have a friend having trouble with her arm and shoulder, and I told her to put hers on a frame. Yeah. And then I have another friend who is unbelievable stitcher. She never uses frames, and she loves to wad them up and get them all soft and all. And her stuff looks great.
Yeah, one of my very good friends, who's also a very good customer and probably my most prolific stitcher in the shop, never ever uses a frame.
Oh, really?
It couldn't be more beautiful. Like, and people try to stitch anyway. Like, yeah.
Oh, I know. I've had there's a darling man that takes my class on Wednesday night, and he never uses a frame. He'll do felting. Wow. He'll do tons of different things that I told him one time, you really need to put it on a frame for this. And he didn't, and it looks great.
Well, there you go.
I was very pleasantly surprised.
Good.
But there's a lot of people that are very judgmental about that, which I think is sad.
For sure.
Because if you enjoy not using a frame, don't use one.
Right.
And there's no shame in that, you know. And my friend was giving me a lot of trouble about it. And I said, you know what? I don't make you feel bad about using a frame.
Right, exactly.
So
both. It depends on what mood I'm in and what I'm working on and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's, it works for everyone. This is all supposed to be about what makes you happy. So do what makes you happy. Yeah, and it's supposed to be relaxing and creative, and you do it the way you like to do it, and don't let other people tell you what you should do. Yes. With your needlepoint, I think so. That's my philosophy. Well, and that kind of leads us into one of the questions I was going to ask you is, what's your best advice for a newer stitcher? Well, and I wrote down my answer. And I always say this to people is, remember, like life, needlepoint is a process and not an event. When you learn how to play tennis, it takes years. Tennis, golf, any kind of sports,
it takes years to master it.
For sure.
And needlepoint to me is always learning more. And you don't get to a point where you don't take classes anymore because you know everything, because you don't.
Oh, I know I don't.
You know, I still take classes. I love to take classes from other people. And still learn a lot from classes. I learn a lot from my customers too.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, the needlepoint, the more you stitch, the more you learn.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that there's a project-based class you might be working on. Is that something you're willing to do? Class?
Yeah, this is what I want to do, this class in a Zoom class.
Oh,
From,
fun.
Hey, Dickerson, I'm doing a practice class now with two of my friends. One of them's in Hawaii, and so it's 5 o'clock in the morning there.
Oh, God.
She looks pretty darn good too. and when she wakes up, and it's still dark, but I want to teach this as a Zoom class online. So we'll see how it goes. And I'm going to teach this Santa to my Wednesday night class, my Barbara's Needlepoint Santa.
Love those Santas.
Yeah, we're going to do that as a class project. And then after that, we'll see if anybody else is interested. My Wednesday night class is like, you know, they're very close.
Right. Well, they've probably all been together for a long time, and they've been with you a long time.
Yeah, and they're very close, and they like to do things together. So, of course, I'm fine with that if I don't have to go to everything. But they're fun, and we have fun when we used to have Wednesday night class.
Very exciting. Yes. Well, good.
So
Good.
And
like that's what's on the horizon.
Yeah, I just want the COVID virus to be over, so we can start back, getting to somewhat back to normal. It's really changed a lot of things.
It has. Although
Really has.
One of the silver linings to this, as I'm not the kind of teacher you are, but for my students, they've all of a sudden realized they can do a lot of this without me.
Yes.
And it's wonderful. I'm like, I've taught you so much. It's now time for you to fly. So.
And, that's always been my goal, is to not make them codependent.
Right.
Except a lot of them are, and they like it like that. But my goal has always been for people to learn how to do stitches on their own and try them out. And you're never pick it right, every one of them right the first time.
I would say you have to audition your stitches. Like
you do, and a lot of times I'll rip out three or four times. Absolutely. To make sure to get the right one. But there's lots of choices. Yeah. Don't you love to see people who they do two canvases the same, and see one was in Chicago and one was in Austin, and they both look great, and they're completely different. For sure. Stitches and threads and.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. I feel like we've taken up a lot of your time. Are there things that we haven't talked about you'd like to throw in?
No, except I hope everybody's staying safe and needlepointing.
I have to say, at least with the situation at my shop, our foot traffic is way down, but our business is way up. So it tells us that people are staying home and stitching, which is exactly
and our finishing is unbelievable amount of stitching. People were bringing in 20 finished pieces. Oh yeah. This one lady brought in 19, all in pattern and wool. Wow. And she had decided she was going to finish them during the virus. Good. Well, so she got her old stuff out and she finished them all.
Yep. People are digging deep in those closets.
Yeah, they are.
Great.
It's funny too. I love to see them do it. And they're just so proud of themselves. And they should be.
For sure. Well, and I've had people say, oh, I haven't stitched in 20 years, or my mom just decided to teach me how because I'm been at home.
A lot of new stitchers too. Yes.
Super exciting. So
it's great, and a lot of youngsters.
Yes, I know. It's really exciting. And all of us are sad for the reasons why, but some of the outcomes are quite popular.
Right. And that's why I wrote this book during the COVID virus.
Oh, I didn't
I
really.
started this in March.
Seriously.
Yes.
From start to, I mean, I know it wasn't started because you had your book to work from, but you went from start to finish in like 4 months.
6 months. 6 months.
That's crazy.
But I worked really hard.
Apparently.
And, but that's what I did. Yeah. Did the whole thing.
That's amazing. Well,
so at least I didn't waste too much time.
Well, we all
But
think.
now I'm starting back stitching.
Good. So is there another book idea in your future?
I have 2 other ones or 3.
That are perfect.
But my computer is over 20 years old. And I don't know how to do any other programs in the draw or the paint program.
Right.
I'm trying to learn on my new iPad, but I haven't quite learned it yet. So I'm working on it.
For those that aren't familiar with charting programs, and I'm not super familiar, all I know is the few that I have tried are not easy to learn. So,
well, this is a Macintosh that's 20 years old, and I use the Apple Works, which they don't even make anymore.
Right.
That computer is so old it won't even get on the internet. It tells me that when it turns on.
It doesn't know what the internet is.
It won't get on the internet anymore. It just says I'm not doing it. And it doesn't.
And you thought you got rid of all your kids. Apparently you still have one at home.
Yeah.
Well,
I have 2 computers though. I have a big one that my son gave me when he got home from Afghanistan.
Okay.
And then I have my old one. I have a young one, and even my young one is 5 years old.
So you can still get on the internet though, so that's good.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Well, I have to thank you.
Melissa, I love seeing you.
I know. I want to thank you though too for all your books, because they are.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a book junkie in general, but your books are very special to me and
thank you.
Helped me grow as a stitcher and have helped a lot of my students grow too. So
good. Well, thank you very much. That's what I write them. That's what they're about, is to help people and to have fun with their needlepoint.
Good. Well, thank you for that. And I say keep on writing and keep on teaching. And I hope to take one of these online classes with you.
Good. Yeah,
really
I would love that.
Yeah. How do people reach you? We should have covered that. Is it going to the Facebook page?
They can email me or Facebook message me.
Okay.
And my email is in every book I write, and nobody knows that.
So,
and it also, you can message me on my Needlepointing in Your Nest page.
Okay. And your email is Needlepointing in Your Nest at
gmail.com.
Good.
And it's on the page that you write your name on, so that when you leave your book at the store, they'll know who to call.
And that's also the page you usually autograph when we get to take classes.
And you just need, this is my bad copy because they messed this one up, but it's in the page that you write your name on and your friends' names.
Good. Well, thank you again. I've really enjoyed spending time with you.
Thank you, Melissa. It was fun. Much fun. Very fun.
Good. Okay. We'll see you soon, my dear.
Bye. Lots of kisses. Bye.